I, 28M, never thought I would have to write something like this about my own sister. Amy, 32F, and I lost our dad 2 years ago to a sudden heart attack while he was driving home from work. Our mom passed away from cancer when I was 8 and Amy was 12, so for most of our lives, it was just the three of us. After mom died, dad had to work 2 jobs to keep us afloat. He worked as a mechanic during the day and took night shifts at a warehouse. This meant Amy basically became my second parent. She cooked, helped me with homework, attended my school events, and basically kept our household running while dad worked himself to exhaustion. Growing up, Amy and I were incredibly close. She was more than just a big sister, she was my best friend, my confidant, and my protector. When I was bullied in middle school, she walked me to school every day. When I had my first heartbreak at 16, she stayed up all night with me eating ice cream and watching movies. She even postponed college for a year to help dad save up more money. I always looked up to her and felt incredibly grateful for her sacrifices. Dad was a simple, hard-working man who lived in the same modest 3-bedroom house for over 30 years. He drove the same old Toyota until it practically fell apart, bought clothes from discount stores, and never took vacations. He never talked about money or investments. The only financial advice he ever gave us was to save for emergencies and avoid debt. After he passed away, it seemed natural for Amy to handle all the paperwork since she's an accountant and I was dealing with a crisis at work. My company was going through layoffs and I was fighting to keep my job. I trusted Amy completely to handle everything fairly. She told me dad had left the house to both of us, which we sold for $280,000 and split equally. She said there was a small life insurance policy that barely covered the funeral expenses, and that was it. I had no reason to doubt her. It fit with everything I knew about dad's lifestyle. Last week, my wife Sarah and I were cleaning out our storage unit because we're trying to downsize to save money for a house down payment. While sorting through boxes, I found one filled with dad's old papers that Amy had given me to store about a year ago. At the bottom of the box was a bank statement from just 2 months before dad died. My hand started shaking when I saw the numbers. It showed an investment account worth $412,743.82. The statement showed regular monthly deposits going back years, along with steady investment growth. Dad had been quietly saving and investing a significant portion of his income all this time. I couldn't process what I was seeing. I called Amy immediately and asked her to come over. When she arrived and I showed her the statement, her reaction told me everything. At first, she tried acting confused, saying she didn't remember seeing any investment accounts. Then when I pressed harder, she got defensive and said dad had told her to handle his finances after he died. Finally, after I threatened to contact the bank directly, she broke down and admitted that she had known about the account all along and had transferred all the money to herself shortly after dad's death. Her justification made me feel sick. She said she deserved the money more because she had sacrificed her youth taking care of me. She brought up every little thing she had ever done for me, making my school lunches, helping with college applications, lending me money when I had credit card trouble in college, which I paid back in full with interest. She said I was too irresponsible with money to handle a large inheritance, pointing to my past financial mistakes even though I've been completely debt-free for years and have a good job in IT now. The past 2 years started playing back in my head with this new context. While Sarah and I have been living in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, struggling to save for a house, postponing having children because we couldn't afford a bigger place, Amy bought a beautiful new house last year. She claimed it was all from her and her husband's savings from their jobs. She even gave us budgeting advice and suggested we cut back on eating out, which we barely did anyway, to save more. I told Amy she had 24 hours to transfer my rightful share of the inheritance, or I would be contacting a lawyer. She started crying and saying I was destroying our relationship over money, that I was being ungrateful after everything she had done for me. Her husband Mark has been calling and texting nonstop, saying I'm being selfish and trying to guilt me into letting it go for the sake of family peace. He keeps bringing up how Amy helped raise me, as if that gives her the right to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from me. Most of our extended family is taking Amy's side. Our Aunt Linda called me yesterday saying I should be grateful for everything Amy did for me growing up and not ruin our sibling relationship over money. My cousin Pete told me I was being heartless and that Amy deserves extra compensation for being my stand-in mother. But none of them seem to understand that this isn't about the money anymore, it's about the betrayal. How many times over the past 2 years has Amy watched me stress about money while sitting on my inheritance? How many times has she offered financial advice while actively hiding my money from me? I keep thinking about Dad and how heartbroken he would be to see this. He worked so hard his entire life to provide for us, saved diligently while denying himself any luxuries, only for Amy to steal it all and justify it based on past sacrifices that she chose to make. He always taught us to be honest and fair with each other, saying that integrity was more important than money. Now every childhood memory I had of us being a close, loving family feels tainted. The 24-hour deadline expires tomorrow morning. After that, I'm contacting a lawyer first thing Monday. My wife is furious and fully supports taking legal action. I never imagined my sister could betray me like this, but I can't let her get away with stealing my inheritance while pretending to be the caring big sister. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my original post, and I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. The situation has gotten even more complicated than I initially thought. After my 24-hour ultimatum expired, Amy did transfer some money to my account, $50,000. Along with the transfer, she sent me a lengthy email that made my blood boil. She claimed this was my fair share of the inheritance because she had spent far more than that raising me after Mom died. The email included a detailed spreadsheet of expenses from our childhood, going back almost 20 years. She had listed everything: school supplies, groceries, utilities, my portion of the rent, clothes, medical expenses, even the cost of the video games she bought me for birthdays and Christmas. She calculated that she had spent over $75,000 of her own money on me during the years she helped raise me, money from her early paychecks while Dad was struggling with 2 jobs. The spreadsheet even included interest calculations, as if this was some kind of loan that needed to be repaid. Reading through her itemized list of every single thing she had ever done for me felt like a punch to the gut. Every act of sisterly love had been reduced to a transaction, with a price tag attached. The sister who I thought had helped raise me out of love was now presenting me with a bill for her services. I couldn't sleep that night, thinking about how she had been keeping these mental receipts all these years while pretending to be the loving big sister. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer who specializes in estate fraud. During our first meeting, he asked a crucial question that I should have thought of sooner: had I ever seen Dad's actual will? I realized I hadn't. Amy had handled everything and just told me what was supposedly in it. The lawyer immediately helped me request a copy from the county records. What we discovered made me physically ill. Dad had left explicit instructions for everything to be split 50-50 between us. The will specifically mentioned not just the investment account I had found, but several other assets I didn't even know existed. There was a second investment account, some bonds, and a life insurance policy that Amy had completely hidden from me. The total estate was worth close to $700,000, not just the $400,000 I had discovered. Amy had hidden almost twice as much as I originally thought. But the real gut punch came while going through the box of Dad's papers more thoroughly. At the bottom, in an envelope I had initially missed, were 2 sealed letters, one addressed to me, one to Amy. Dad had written them 3 months before he died but never got the chance to give them to us. My hands were shaking as I read mine. Dad wrote about how proud he was of both of us, how he had worked and saved his whole life to make sure we would be okay after he was gone. He also mentioned being worried about Amy's attitude toward me. Apparently, she had made some comments to him about feeling like she had missed out on her youth because of having to help raise me. In Amy's letter, which I probably shouldn't have read but couldn't help myself, Dad thanked her for helping with me but also expressed concern about her growing resentment. He wrote that the inheritance was meant to be split equally specifically because he wanted us to stay close as siblings after he was gone. He worried that money might come between us and made it clear that his estate was meant to be shared fairly. Reading those letters destroyed me. Dad had seen this coming somehow and tried to prevent it, but never got the chance. I confronted Amy with copies of the will and letters at her house. She completely broke down and admitted everything. Through tears, she told me she had been bitter for years about sacrificing her youth to help raise me. When Dad died, she saw the inheritance as her chance to finally get compensation for all those years. She had convinced herself that she deserved more than me, that Dad would have understood if he knew how she really felt. The lawyer says we have an absolutely solid case for estate fraud. The existence of the will makes it clear-cut: she deliberately concealed assets she was legally required to share. Now Amy is calling me constantly, begging me not to take legal action because it will ruin her career as an accountant. Her husband Mark, who was originally pressuring me to let it go, has now turned against her after learning the full truth about how much she had hidden. Most of our relatives who initially took her side have gone quiet after learning about the will and letters. The few who still defend her say that growing up without a mom affected her more deeply than anyone realized, that having to be a mother figure at 12 years old warped her perspective on family and money. They might be right, but that doesn't excuse what she did. I'm proceeding with legal action. The lawyer is preparing the paperwork now. Amy keeps trying to negotiate, offering different amounts to settle, but I don't trust a word she says anymore. I've blocked her number and told all relatives that I won't discuss it with them. This goes beyond money now, it's about years of lies and manipulation from someone I trusted completely. Finding out that she had been secretly resenting me all these years while pretending to be the loving big sister has destroyed any chance of salvaging our relationship. Update 2. 3 months have passed since my last update, and what we've discovered through the legal process has changed everything. My lawyer subpoenaed Amy's bank records as part of the estate fraud case, and what we found was far worse than I imagined. She hadn't just hidden the inheritance after Dad died, she had actually started moving his money while he was still alive. In his final year, when Dad was having some health issues and occasionally forgetting things, Amy had convinced him to add her name to his accounts to help manage his finances. She used this access to gradually transfer small amounts to her own accounts. The bank records show a pattern that makes me sick to my stomach. Every month, she would move $3,000 to $5,000 from Dad's accounts to hers, timing the transfers with his regular pension deposits so he wouldn't notice the missing money. She did this for almost a year before he died, taking close to $100,000 in total. She even changed his online banking password so he couldn't check the accounts himself, telling him it was for security reasons. When my lawyer presented this evidence to her lawyer, Amy finally broke down and told the full truth. Dad had started having occasional memory lapses in his last year. Nothing serious, forgetting where he put his keys, missing a few bill payments, that kind of thing. But Amy used these minor incidents to convince him he needed help managing his money. Instead of telling me or getting proper legal arrangements made through a lawyer, she decided to take control herself. According to Amy, she initially told herself she was protecting Dad's money for both of us. She claimed she was worried he might give money to scammers or forget to pay important bills. But once she had access to his accounts and saw how much he had saved, she started feeling entitled to more. She admitted to manipulating Dad during his vulnerable moments, making him think he was spending more than he actually was so he wouldn't question where the money was going. The bank records also revealed something that made me even more furious. During this same period, while she was stealing from Dad, she had borrowed $15,000 from me for what she claimed was a medical emergency with her husband Mark. She paid me back eventually, but now I realized she was using Dad's stolen money to do it. She was literally using stolen money from our father to pretend she was paying me back. The lawyer says this changes everything legally. It's not just estate fraud anymore. What she did could be considered elder financial abuse since she took advantage of Dad when he was showing signs of cognitive decline. She manipulated him into giving her account access, then systematically stole from him while hiding his declining mental state from me. If we pursue this angle, she could face criminal charges. Mark finally reached out to me directly last week. He's filing for divorce after discovering Amy had been hiding money from him too. Apparently, she had been lying to him about their finances for years. He found out she had a secret account he never knew about, and now he's worried she might have been stealing from her accounting clients as well. Amy is now offering to return everything plus interest if I agree to drop the case. She sent me a long email explaining that she got in over her head and didn't know how to stop once she started. She claims she always intended to pay it all back eventually but kept finding reasons to delay. She's begging me to show mercy, saying criminal charges would destroy her life and career. Some family members are pressuring me to accept her offer. Our Aunt Linda, who initially defended Amy, now says that while what she did was wrong, sending her to prison won't bring Dad back. Our cousin Pete suggested that maybe Dad's memory issues were worse than we knew, and Amy's actions, while wrong, might have come from a place of genuine concern about his mental state. But I keep thinking about Dad in his final year, being manipulated and stolen from by his own daughter. While he was having those small memory lapses that frightened and confused him, his trusted daughter was using them to steal his life savings instead of getting him proper help. I also can't stop wondering, if he hadn't died when he did, how much more would she have taken? Would she have eventually cleaned out all his accounts? The lawyer says we have an extremely strong case if we want to pursue criminal charges. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do, but I know one thing, I'll never be able to look at my sister the same way again. The person I thought she was never really existed. Update 3, it's been 6 months since this nightmare began, and everything has finally come to a head, though not in the way anyone expected. Amy checked herself into a mental health facility last month after having what Mark described as a complete breakdown. She apparently hadn't slept for days and was becoming increasingly paranoid about everyone finding out what she had done. The divorce proceedings between Amy and Mark revealed even more shocking information. She hadn't just been hiding money from him, she had been embezzling from several of her accounting clients for years. When the State Board of Accountancy started investigating her after Mark reported some irregularities he found, she completely fell apart. 3 of her biggest clients have already pressed criminal charges, and more may follow. Before checking herself in, Amy signed over everything she had taken from Dad's estate, plus interest. Her lawyer delivered a cashier's check along with a USB drive containing all her financial records. The drive showed years of systematic theft and deception, not just from Dad and me, but from practically everyone who trusted her. She had been running a complex web of fraud, moving money between accounts to cover her tracks. I also learned why she really needed that $15,000 loan from me 2 years ago. She had been gambling online, trying to win back money she had taken from one of her clients. Mark found dozens of online casino accounts in her name, with hundreds of thousands in losses. She had been stealing to cover gambling debts, then gambling more trying to fix her mistakes. It was a vicious cycle that just kept getting worse. Most of our relatives have stopped defending her actions entirely. Even Aunt Linda, who was her strongest supporter, admitted that Amy needs serious help beyond what family can provide. The few relatives who had sided with her initially have been calling to apologize to me, saying they had no idea about the gambling or the extent of her deception. I received a long letter from Amy last week, written from the facility where she's getting treatment. She finally explained everything, how she started gambling in her early 20s as a way to cope with the stress of being a surrogate parent, how it spiraled out of control, and how she had been living a double life for years. She wrote that she had convinced herself she deserved Dad's money as compensation for her sacrifices, but really she just needed it to cover her gambling losses. The hardest part to read was her admission that she had been planning to steal from Dad even before his memory issues started. She had just used his confusion as an excuse when she got caught. She ended the letter begging for forgiveness, saying she knows she doesn't deserve it but hopes someday I can at least understand that she was sick. I've decided to go no contact permanently. Some people, including my wife Sarah, say I'm being too harsh, that Amy is sick and needs family support to recover. But I can't forget how she manipulated our father in his final days, how she watched me struggle financially while sitting on stolen money, how she turned every act of sisterly love into a transaction she felt entitled to collect on. The inheritance money is now in a trust managed by an independent trustee. I'm using part of it to establish a scholarship in Dad's name at his old high school, focusing on helping students who have lost parents. It feels like the right way to honor his memory and his belief in education as a path to a better life. I still catch myself missing the sister I thought I had, but I've finally accepted that person never really existed. The real Amy was hidden behind a mask of caring and sacrifice, systematically stealing from everyone who trusted her. I hope she gets the help she needs, but I can't have her in my life anymore. Some betrayals just cut too deep to heal.